Hey folks, I'm back with another mock SQL interview question. Let's get started. Today I'll try to do a hard problem, or at least what Stratascratch designates as hard. Let's try Apple. I don't think I've done any questions from Apple yet, so let's try that out. And as usual, I've not looked at this beforehand, so I'm seeing this for the first time. And I'll start a timer. Because this is a hard question, I'm going to try and do it in under 7 minutes. Select the most popular client ID based on a count of the number of users who have at least 50% of their events from the following list. And it's just a bunch of event names. Okay, interesting. So this is a really short prompt, and there's only one table, all right? Let's try to figure out what are they really asking. So they want the most popular client ID, and they define that as the number of users who have at least 50% of their events from the following list. So it seems like the first thing I have to do is figure out which users have at least 50% of their events from one of these events. So let's start writing code here. So we want to get the user ID, and we want to know what percentage of their events are from the following list. So we can do a count case when event type. Is that the column name? I'm just going to copy and paste it so I don't have any typo issues. Event name in this list. I wonder if I can just plop that in there. And then if it is in this list, then we will count the ID. You know, I realize I didn't look at this table in depth. I should probably look at this table real quick. Okay, so it's fact events. So I assume the ID is like an event ID. And we have the time that the event happened, the user ID, event type. Okay, I think the main columns that we need for now are just user ID and event type. Let me see if this works. Okay, it does. And then, but we want to find the percentage. So we'll divide this by the count of total. So counting star is like the count of total events. Let's see. And this will probably return 0. So we need to cast this as a decimal. And I'll say percent the specific event. Does that work? Yep. Okay, so we've got user ID and the percent of their events that have occurred in that are one of these events. So let me make this into a CTE here. I'll call it data. Okay, now that we have that, what is the next step? We need to figure out the most popular client ID based on a count of the number of users. Okay, so we need to group by client ID and count the number of users who have at least 50% of their events from this list. So we'll do select from the table, fact events. I'm going to join data, and I'll explain why in a second, on user ID. And we want only those users who have at least 50%, so it's greater than or equal to at least 50% of their events from, you know, the list of events that they have. That's why we're doing this join. All right, so now we've restricted the events to just the users who have at least 50% of their events from that list. Now we want to count the number of users. But you know what? Select the most popular client ID. They only want the client ID. So I think we can maybe get away without counting here. We can rank. And now we want to order by the count of users, descending. We want to group by client ID since we have a Window function here, I'll call this prep. And now that's all that's left to do is select the client ID from prep, rank equals 1. Let's check this out. Okay, that looks right. Nice. All right, let me recap this a little bit. So the prompt is really short. It's 2 lines. And there's only one table. So what's tricky about this? I think what's tricky about this is there are several instructions just in these 2 lines. They want the most popular client ID, and they define that in a certain way. And then the way that they define that has like yet another definition, right? It's like at least 50% of their events from this list. And there might be a way to solve this with fewer lines of code. I mean, usually there's more than one way to solve these types of problems. But I'm personally like most familiar with CTEs, so I tend to rely a lot on CTEs. But there's like a lot of instructions wrapped in these 2 lines. So the first step is identify the users who have, well, it's not even identifying the users. It's for each user, calculate what percent of their events are in this list. That's the first step. And then the second step is, of the users who have 50% or more of their events from that list, like group by client ID and then count those users. To me, I think this is like, it's like a reading comprehension thing, right? Like you guys are probably looking at this and it's, not that complicated of SQL, but at least for analytics type roles at tech companies, it's not necessarily about how complicated the SQL is. It's like, can you understand the business question and then translate that into SQL? Like that's the hard part. So, all right, that was me solving this Airbnb question, and I hope that was helpful to you folks. Thanks.